Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. He kind of wears multiple hats, quite literally. He's a book author, a hands-on entrepreneur, and an engineer, all rolled into one. Mike, it's fun to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
Yeah, great to be here. Good to looking forward to just having a conversation. To be honest, we would talk on Twitter
Awesome.
sometimes.
Why don't you give us a quick introduction of all that you're doing?
Yeah, so I come from a marketing background. I used to run a marketing agency. I grew it to 50 people. It was called
Hmm.
Lado, Lado.io, and it was in New York and London. And then slowly got more and more technical over time. Didn't want to wait for the IT team to implement stuff. Wanted to set up A/B tests and Optimizely and all that stuff. So
Right.
I learned JavaScript first, then got into data science, Python. When I left the agency in 2020, I started to code full time. And
Okay.
then it was also very fortuitous because that's when AI happened. I got
Right.
access to
Right.
GPT-3. I was
Right.
like, oh, this is going to change everything. I just didn't
Right.
expect it to happen this quick, you know? Uh, I wrote a book on prompt engineering for O'Reilly actually, I say last year, it's 2 years ago now.
Right.
Which is a million years ago in AI. But now working on Ask Rally, which is like a AI market research tool, which we can talk more about.
Awesome. By the way, I do have a copy of your book lying somewhere.
Oh,
But
thanks.
I should have made a mental note of bringing it along with me. And I believe you did above the sort of really coveted 10,000 copies, right?
Yeah,
Much
yeah, yeah.
above
We
that?
sold more than 10,000 copies. Although, funnily enough, alongside writing the book, we also created a course on Udemy,
Right.
and
Right.
we made way more money from the Udemy course. Yeah. I didn't know what to expect, but we've had 300,000 people take that course.
Wow,
It's
that's
crazy.
amazing.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's every course creator's dream right there.
Yeah, passive income. Like I remember reading Tim Ferriss a long
Uh,
time ago, and wanting to have that 4-hour work week, and now I have it, but I still work like 60, 70 hours anyway.
yeah, well, that's
Yeah,
the life of an entrepreneur, right?
yeah.
It's awesome to have you in the DSPy community because I think you bring a sort of a whole different perspective to things, and I think that's why many of us follow you on Twitter. So let's kind of jump into Ask Rally.
Hmm.
It's a SaaS app that you're doing, and I believe it's built on top of DSPy. So before we get into the technical questions, would love to kind of see what Ask Rally is, what it does.
Yeah,
Over to you.
yeah, sure. Yeah, so Rally really started as a script I was running locally in Jupyter Notebooks
Mhm.
because I wanted to ask ChatGPT for advice, but I wanted advice from different angles.
Right.
So I had a prompt where I said, okay, generate 5, 10 different people, the different marketing personas that would be interested in this question that I'm asking, and then turn that into responses from each one. I would generate the audience first, and then I would get individual responses from each one, and then I would aggregate that as a summary. And I call
Right.
this personas of thought, like a chain of thought. Instead of
Right.
going along thinking down, instead you're
Right.
doing horizontal thinking. So that was something a lot of people were interested in. So I turned it into what eventually became Rally. And
Got it.
still works the same way. So if you ask a question, for example, I'm just going to say, like, what do you think a DSPy stands for? Let's see. Obviously, like this audience, this is a general population audience. So if you look
Okay.
into
Got
these
it.
guys, there is a software engineer here from West
Right.
Africa. This actually is kind of weighted heavily towards tech, but we also
Okay.
have a lot of regular people as well, like
Understood.
this person here, farm worker from Salt
Um,
Lake City. And
Got it.
we've had many different ways to do this, but we can get into the details. These are actually based off real people. They're
Understood.
anonymized, and then we optimize them with DSPy. So
Understood.
we'll see what they say anyway. Here we go. So the general consensus is DSPy is a tech-related term. Many
Right.
guessing it's related to data science. Yeah, I guess not too wrong there. Some individuals saying it's outside of their area of expertise. Yeah, so we can go and see like the individual ones. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, what the heck is that? Right? It
Yeah.
sounds like a big government thing or whatever.
Doesn't it?
So you can see the individual responses, and then you can. Sorry, actually, there's a lot here. I asked a lot of questions, but yeah, you can see like we're getting an overall overall response from lots of different angles, and then we can
Right.
summarize that. So
Got it.
the way people are using it, they want to get some creative feedback. Quite often, it's like marketing agencies, like what I used
Right.
to do.
Right.
Where they're like, "Hey, should I run this ad or this ad?
Yeah.
What do you like about this ad?" And then they can make changes to it before it goes
Right.
live.
Right.
But also things like product managers, like they're asking, "What do you think of this UX? If you needed to get to the settings, where would you click on this page?" Things
Correct.
like that. Because we can take images, we can take videos as well.
Understood. So you're marrying synthetic data with focus groups.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right. So the idea is if you can do a focus group and it's to some degree accurate
Right.
using synthetic data, you can avoid a lot of bad decisions that if I used to do this all the time in the marketing agency. You just
Got it.
couldn't like afford to run a focus group
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
every decision, right?
Absolutely.
So that was the idea. And I think important to state that this is not a replacement for market research.
Yeah. Yeah.
You still
Absolutely.
should talk to your customers. You should
Right.
still do customer interviews in particular, and we still do. We did like I've done 300 of them in the past year. But this is a great complement for those times when you don't have customer research.
Right.
Like you can't possibly like I run this every time I post something on LinkedIn, right? So
Right.
like you
Right.
can't do a focus group for every LinkedIn post normally, but because this is a
Right.
thousand times cheaper than running a focus group, you can at least get some directional feedback and understand what to do.
Understood. So a couple of things. When you first told me about Ask Rally, I was an immediate sort of believer for three reasons. One, I used to work at that startup called Mind House
Hmm.
during COVID times, and we were launching a meditation app. Plus, there was a paper that they wanted to do, and we wanted to get a focus group sort of in place. And
Mm.
it was headed by the business team, but I was part of it in terms of tech and onboarding. And it was very difficult just getting 50 people, and
Yeah.
sort of it's a lot of hard work. So that's one. And in that, it's just not about getting them. You want them to do a bunch of things for you, right?
Yes.
And then you have to incentivize and get the time and scheduling. There's a whole bunch of things.
Yeah. It's not just that's actually a key point. It's not just the cost; it's also the time.
Yeah,
In fact, the time might be more important.
more important. Exactly.
Like if you want to make a quick decision on something, you don't want to wait for weeks or months to bring in the right people. And people get bored of answering these
Yeah,
questions.
yeah, absolutely.
There's also something that's kind of funny is most traditional research, people are using AI to answer those questions now to make
Right.
money off the research. They
Yeah,
get
yeah,
a
yeah.
$10
Oh, wow.
Amazon
Wow.
voucher. I
Wow.
made the joke on Twitter. I think like it's like you're getting real insights from your synthetic users, and then synthetic insights from your real
Yeah,
real
yeah,
interviews.
got it. I didn't think of it that way. So just sort of connecting my thought on the synthetic data part, right?
Hmm.
So actually, let me show it to you. It is a private gist. I did this work for a real estate sort of captive agency by one of the builders, and they get a lot of calls, right? Like whenever something goes viral, like
Hmm.
somebody showing a really good house, and so many people want to call and just ask about the price and a bunch of other things, and they have
Yeah.
no intention of buying, right? So you want to
Mm.
find real buyers. So a real buyer would ask a whole bunch of questions that pertain to buying a house, but at the same, so you have a lot of different buyers calling in different languages, and the calls are of varying length, right?
Hmm.
And the like how a Nigerian would speak English, and how somebody from Philippines would speak, and how somebody from India would speak,
Yeah.
right? It'll be
Very
all
different.
different, right? And then you have people switching codes, right? Like Indians might just all of a sudden realize there's somebody other Indian on the side and may talk in Hindi, and all
Hmm.
these things. Right now, I wasn't even aware about that,
Yeah.
and I just wanted to generate data, and I generated this using X API, and
Hmm.
uh, and then obviously we put it in DSPy optimizer later on.
Yeah.
I just became sort of it was all accidental just to generate data. I
Yeah.
wasn't. I just wanted to run my code against a whole bunch of things, and I was like, how do I get the transcripts if it's a POC first and they are not giving the data?
Yeah.
But it just ended up being a revelation that by virtue of training LLMs on all these conversational data, you
Hmm.
are actually mimicking something that is absolutely close to what a human would do.
Yeah.
And thus, when I saw Ask Rally and my experience of the difficulty of putting a focus group, and then my experience of building a synthetic data. And I just like, I'm a big believer that this will work. But do you
Yeah.
have difficulty in selling this to people?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And yeah, great use case because, yeah, I've done a bunch of similar things in the past. And like I was working as a prompt engineer over the past 4 or 5 years.
Right.
So yeah, like every single time the clients didn't have any data or they couldn't share the data, it's
Right.
sensitive, whatever. So yeah, I was using synthetics all the time. I was like, oh, it's actually like working really well. And,
Right.
we can cover all these use cases that we hadn't, we wouldn't even see in the real data. Like even if they do have real data, there are
Right.
things that they're worried about that they can't actually get real data on, and we see people do that with Rally as well. Like you have people
Right.
who they're like practicing a sales pitch before they
Right.
reach out in person, because they can't get it wrong when they do reach out, things like that, or they're asking questions that would be maybe sensitive to ask,
Mhm.
for their audience.
Got it.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting edge cases there. I
Okay.
think yeah, we have struggled a little bit, to be honest. Like the industry is very new, and in particular, I think the market research community, it's kind of trendy to be anti AI.
Oh,
you know,
really? Wow.
I think so. Yeah, because I mean, to be honest, like if you think about it, if you really strongly believe that that you should talk to people more. Like all good market researchers believe that.
Right.
And every day they're battling with like the CEO who doesn't talk to the customers enough.
Customers.
And then any threat against that is
Got it.
bad news. So I think that's fair enough. I think there are a lot of market researchers who have adopted it. For us, I think the big question that always comes is how accurate is this? Like, is
Right.
this, if I went and run a real study, like how close would it be? And that's like a surprisingly deep question, which we could probably spend 4 hours talking about. But
Yeah. Yeah.
that was why I reached for DSPy, because I was like, okay, we're talking about accuracy here, and I know a magic trick for improving accuracy. So that was why I went so deep on it.
Got it. But so use DSPy for this, right? And so I would like
Yeah.
to know, so do you have like, is the persona sort of an optimized prompt that is now sort of frozen and deployed? And do you like, how does this work behind the scene? Do you have a single prompt that's creating all these personas, or do you
Mhm.
have like some sort of cohorts? And do you have a different prompt for every persona? How does this work?
Yeah, good question. So, when we started, it was one single prompt for querying personas, one single prompt for generating personas, and we were
Okay.
using a process that I called personification, which was there's a few papers that talk about this, where basically you give a distribution, you say I think this is similar to what you just did with your gist. Like I want like men, women, I
Right.
want people from
Distribution.
Dubai, people from India, yeah, and you maybe even give percentages, and
Right.
you can test and see like how well do the demographics match. We actually
Right.
did a couple of really big projects early on for a large agency for
Okay.
their credit card client that you would know if,
Ah,
but you
yeah,
can
yeah.
guess which one. And
I understood.
it was like that, right? Like we actually generated 5,000 personas
Got it.
matching the distribution that their customers usually have
Got it.
for all sorts of things. That is one way to approach it. We actually abandoned that eventually. We still have that in the product, but we found that you only get something like 60 to 70% accuracy, which
Okay.
isn't only enough for like a directional feel. You can get a good accurate distribution of the personas, but they still sound like ChatGPT.
Understood.
And they do actually cover a lot of the same topics that people would talk about in real life, but it is missing some of the soul,
Got it.
So and doesn't feel like, I think it kind
Oh,
of breaks
sometimes.
the authenticity. It kind of makes it harder to actually use that information and show your boss and say like, hey, here's this
Understood.
insight, and it sounds like
Right.
ChatGPT. Yeah, so we've gone very aggressive,
Mm-hmm.
like any good entrepreneur. We went down to the level where we build an individual model for each persona,
Okay.
and actually two models. So we have
Okay.
a judge, an LLM judge, which we've
Ah,
trained with DSPy,
understood.
which knows the transcript from a real user interview. So we
Ah,
actually went and recruited these people using
understood.
Prolific. Like we have a cohort of people that we've interviewed, and then we know what the real person said and we know what the persona is saying. So
Got it.
we can train the judge, be able to do a Turing test, essentially, like which
Understood.
one is the real person.
Got it.
Once the judge is trained, then we train the persona more. We can go back and forth like that. It's the Evaluator-Optimizer model, which a lot of people
Okay.
use.
Got it.
So yeah, or it's similar to a GAN, generative adversarial network, like the
Right.
old school like image gen stuff.
Right.
But yeah, like basically the judge is always trying to guess which one is the real person, and then
Right.
the persona is always trying to trick the judge. So
Understood.
that's how we handle it. Yeah, but actually in terms of in production, we don't use DSPy. Omar will kill me for saying this, but
I'm just about to get
we actually, yeah, he'll be disappointed. Yeah, we just export the prompt, and then we
understood.
use Pydantic
Understood.
AI, just because the my CTO who's on the team, he's much more familiar with that framework.
Got it.
And he has like never used DSPy, and therefore, and he's like the better engineer than me. So I'm often Jupyter notebooks doing DSPy experiments, and then I give
Got it.
him I throw it over the hill basically to him, and then he implements it properly in
Right.
production. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Awesome. Okay, so that was helpful. Now, just want to go back to the fact that you sort of hired this cohort. So that sort of seeded the golden data set for you in the sense of the
Yeah.
profiles, right? Like what the persona should be. And so generally, when it comes to focus groups, sometimes focus groups are super niche, right?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
they would say, "Hey, I need women. Should be doing X, Y, Z," and
Yeah.
in that case, do you have to sort of go revisit, build new personas, and then sort of go down the track of building an audience?
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So that we have that as like an enterprise service. We can build like a custom panel.
Okay.
But the goal eventually is to have enough people in our general population that we can cover every base.
Understood.
Yeah, and there's an interesting angle to this
Mm.
where it is compounding. So I'll give you the example. Like I recorded myself. I'm in there. I won't tell you which one. You can guess. But I was talking about, like, one of the questions is like,
Mhm.
walk me through your typical day. And all the questions are like that. They're semi-structured. So we're hitting upon topics we know there's really rich information for persona
Right.
construction. And we've
Right.
gone back and forth and tested this so many times. But like, if I tell you about my lunch, for example, I say, I went down to Sainsbury's because I work from home. So it's just the
Right.
closest place. And
Right.
I got the meal deal from Sainsbury's. And usually I pick one up for my wife as well because she works from home as well. And now, just in that few seconds, I've already told you, now I have a wife, right?
Right.
I like Sainsbury's. I eat sandwiches. You've actually picked up quite a lot of information.
Correct.
In fact, Sainsbury's is only in the UK, I think, right? So
Right.
now you also know my location. So you can take that unstructured data and turn it into lots of structured data points. So if you
Right.
query my persona and you see that in the transcript, you could say, like, do you have a wife? And
Hmm.
my persona would answer yes, because it can see it in the
Got it.
transcript. Yeah. So
Got it.
it's really interesting. You can layer on so many structured data points on top of these, storytelling kind of unstructured data. And that's what LLMs are really good at.
Right. Awesome. That was super helpful. So, since you talked about, when I was looking at Ask Rally and based on what you talked about, and the fact that your CTO loves to use Pydantic
Hmm.
and you like DSPy. So, this brings me to my next sort of question. Do you
Yeah.
think DSPy needs another library that sort of handles the agentic AI flow? Something that comes up with, sort of memory interfaces built in? Sort of
Mm.
some sort of harness and guardrail library just for AI agents flow, or do you think DSPy is good as it is?
Yeah, it's a good question. Because I've been burned by libraries before multiple times, right? Like,
Okay.
as you can imagine,
Yeah.
because I was around with GPT-3, so every 6 months someone comes up with a new thing, and
Right.
like, I was very very deep into LangChain when I wrote my
Mm.
book, for example, but now I don't use it at all. And not that it's a bad library. I think they're all actually pretty good, and they all have very similar features,
Right.
and some are better at some things than others. But I just keep coming back to. I always go back to the raw SDKs. Like, I use OpenAI SDK directly, right? Like, I use Claude Code now, for a lot of things, like the
Right.
Claude SDK. I call the APIs, even for like open source models. I don't really locally host. I just call one of the providers, right?
Okay.
Like, replicate or whatever. So for me, I think frameworks are maybe quite often an unnecessary abstraction.
Mm.
And I was very hesitant for that reason to adopt DSPy. So I was like, not another framework. Like, I don't, I don't want to have to do this again. And I would say that actually, people don't really understand what DSPy is. And I guess actually, um, a lot of the complexity that people feel when they look at DSPy is this complexity of like, oh no, not another framework. And now I have to
Yeah.
learn how they do things. And actually, I think there's not really anything there. It's literally
Mm.
just boiling it down to the essentials. What are the
Right.
inputs? What are the
Correct.
outputs? Do you have any instruction to start this off? And then give me your data set and your evaluation metric. And the funny thing is, I was kind of building that layer of abstraction on top of the OpenAI
Oh,
API anyway,
got it.
because I would have a function that would say, take the inputs and then insert them into the prompt,
Right.
So once I got used to it, actually I use DSPy now for most of my scripting, and then I've got like a helper function that just extracts the prompt afterwards. So I use a custom adapter so that
Oh.
it's not in this. I don't like the weird default DSPy prompt template. I know they say that it works better, but yeah. So for me, I'm quite often using DSPy for my own scripting, just because it's actually easier than using the native SDK, because I
Mhm.
just have to worry about the inputs and outputs. They
Got
basically
it.
stripped everything out other than the things I actually care about.
Understood.
And then because of that, there's no additional burden, right? Like when OpenAI releases something new,
Mhm.
it's usually like pretty easy in DSPy land to adapt to it.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's a long answer, but yeah, I actually use DSPy a lot for my scripting. I use it a lot for optimization. But I think the one thing it hasn't really covered yet is production. And I don't
Mm.
think it's because it's not production ready. I think it's just that it's like very, very hard to get someone to change what they're
Mhm.
using already in
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
production,
Like,
if that makes sense. Yeah.
once you develop muscle memory in something, you're more comfortable with that, right?
Exactly. It'll be interesting to see if more people go towards a DSPy in production over time,
Mm.
because it's won people like us over. But
I
I
think
also
it
I
have
think
its
that
place.
it's hard to it's hard to get past like the native
Right.
model
SDKs.
implementation. That's always going to be the most popular in my opinion.
Yep, yep. I kind of agree to that. Okay, so let's just so two things. Let's talk about your upcoming book, Context
Mhm.
Engineering with DSPy. How is it going? It's with O'Reilly once again. Where are we? When
Yep.
the book is hitting the shelf? What's up there?
Yeah, so because I wrote about prompt engineering last time, and now that's not cool anymore, and everyone's talking about context engineering, I
Right.
had to go back to the drawing board. No, I wanted to. My last book, I would say, is like about 40% non-technical, 60% technical.
Right.
Actually, I have friends who don't know how to code who found some value.
Okay.
But this one is 100% technical. It's
Correct.
I think context engineering in particular is more for people who are actually building long-running agent tasks, and
Correct.
that is a wholly technical approach right now.
Right.
So you run in. I would say prompt engineering now is like a subset of context engineering.
Hmm.
Context engineering is like everything outside of the prompt. What can we put in? What can we compact?
Right.
What can we take away? So it's really exciting to explore that and expand on it, and also just to kind of write a book. It's like a love letter to DSPy. I'm hoping that people like the context engineering will attract the people on Twitter who like want to see the next big thing, but I'm hoping into giving them the like DSPy medicine. That's the real value I think in the book, is like just getting them over that hump, because we've talked about this before. DSPy documentation is quite academic. It's a little bit hard for people to understand whether it's worth the effort to
Right.
get to use it. And
Yeah.
I just think it's so good that like I want to use it for everything, and I feel like other people need to see that.
Well, I can assure you the community is with you to spread this gospel to everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. So in terms of timelines, like I'm ahead of schedule, which is good. So I've written 5 chapters out of 11.
Okay.
So and that's going to accelerate over the next couple of months.
Awesome.
But yeah, because I just finished a big project. So yeah, I'm focusing on that now, and hoping to have it done just before the summer.
Okay.
So that means probably end of summer, something like that. Yeah.
The book will hit the shelves. Awesome.
Yeah.
Uh, okay. So let's zoom out a little bit, sort of before we wrap up. So you're balancing a book, you got a startup going
Yeah.
on, and
Yeah.
on and off you're writing code. So just
Yeah.
curious, like there's this whole thing going on right now that business, like we'll have a lot of solo founders doing a whole bunch of things, right?
Mhm.
And smaller teams sort of taking
Yeah.
over the world. So how is it a lot of cognitive load? Like how does context switching work for you? And how do you decide when to delegate what work? Because it seems like you can play all those roles. So how does this work?
Yeah, it's not something I've solved in any way. I feel I think about it every day. Am I working on the right thing?
Right.
And quite often I'm not. But yeah, I'm quite lucky because I have like this like passive income coming in from this course on Udemy.
Right.
So that makes it a little bit easier to have the breathing room to like experiment
Got
with
it.
stuff and make mistakes and things. So I would say like weirdly, like 90% of the things I work on right now, I work for free,
Right.
hoping that it will become like an asset someday, right? So like,
Got it.
the book, you work on that for free basically
Right.
until it comes out a year later, and then hopefully it does well,
Got it.
and it's a very weird lifestyle actually, to like my
Yeah.
wife is very confused most of the time as to what I'm working on and why same
Got it.
for me. So yeah, like same thing with Rally. Like it's growing. We grew 30% last month.
Okay.
But it's still not at the phase where it could like support 3 people full time. So I haven't taken a salary from that yet.
Wow.
We haven't raised either. Like I want to kind of get it really really going. If before we do that. So because
Yeah.
then I'd have to focus properly.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I have all this optionality, but yeah, largely I just work on things that I find personally interesting, and also actually the important thing is the things that the people I respect find interesting. So yeah, like I think that's the extra layer. Like a lot of people get the first one right, but the second one wrong,
Right.
and they miss out on some of these trends.
Mhm.
The reason I got into AI is because a lot of the smart people I knew were like, "You have to try this. Like,
Right.
it's pretty amazing," and you have to have that filter effect because it's very easy to work on something that you personally like.
Correct.
But isn't commercially useless, so that's kind of that extra filter, and then the third one, which is much harder to prove, is like do people actually want to like pay you money to do this? So that's the one that like 90% of the time I'm wrong, but when 10% of the time something hits, then that
Right.
pays for another year of exploration.
Got it. Got it. Well, you got an eventful life, and you certainly have your hands full. Mike, thanks for this insightful conversation, talking everything about Rally, the upcoming DSPy book. For a lot of folks who want to be entrepreneur and come from tech background, I'm sure they would sort of be amazed with what you have accomplished, and also not to mention reaching the 10,000 book sale mark that very few do.
Mm.
Thanks for coming, and we are great to have you in the community. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, and thanks for all the stuff that you do for DSPy as well. It's I read it every time. All
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. You have a nice day.
right, all right, thanks.